Hello, everyone. It is me, David. We are about to do our judges. I'm sorry, I was just a few minutes late, guys. Thank you for your incredible patience. Gonna post the link on YouTube. One person is watching. Who is this one person? Is it Cassandra? Perhaps it is. Yeah. So, not sure if you guys can see the link. Hopefully, you can. If you can, I'd love it if I had someone who would join me as per usual. Okay, already in the chat. Hey, there's Sandy.
Hey.
Hello.
Multitasking.
I'm doing the same thing. This was a crazy day. Have you seen did you see the background? Oh, where is it?
I did. I love it.
Let me how do I remove both of us? Shibboteth! In case you didn't know what section we'd be on.
I love that.
Yeah. Sandy, how are you?
I'm very well. My brain's overstimulated, but
Very well?
I think so.
What does that mean? Talk to me.
I'm very well. My brain's overstimulated, but the rest of me's kind of been pacing the day well. Okay. So yeah. I feel like it's, everything's talking to each other in a good way. And I have a billion questions, not necessarily on Shibboteth, or Shibboteth. I'm paralleling two books. Former book club book by Rabbi Sachs on the Great Partnership, and tomorrow's reading assignment for Vervaeke on the Nothingness Beyond God.
Oh, that's all,
Just a few little things. I have not escaped the introduction yet. I've had lots of time to probably hit chapter 2 or 3. Well, but overthinking has me locked into a few points.
Yeah. And Sandy, I'd really love to have just a one-on-one conversation with you. Maybe not even live, about just some of the things that we've been talking about where it is exactly you fit in.
Where do I fit in?
Yeah. I mean, that is the question of all time. Yeah. Oh. That's a question that I think all of us are trying to figure out.
Well, some people do it, though, in a way that resembles me trying to get out of the introduction to this book, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
You gotta hold it a lot more gently than that. Just kind of,
Well, so one of the reasons why I love the book of Judges is I think Judges is right now. I think Judges is an excellent representation of the current time period that we're in. And so I have extra sympathy for it as a result of that. But that's terrible news, right?
Why?
Because Judges is a time where what is our identity? How are we even held together? Do we even have things in common?
That's exactly what I'm reading.
Yeah. It's horrifying to be in the times of the Judges, right?
Really?
Who do you want as a leader? Do you want Jephthah as a leader, or you want David? What's your preference?
Who do I want as a leader?
Yeah, you want Jephthah or you want David?
I've never actually thought of that question. God's been my leader because I've always lived in a chaotic
Right.
mind.
Well,
my only hope is to not worry about it. Leaders come and go, chaos comes and goes. Near-death experiences are often a little too close for what you would like, and God's the guy guiding the path.
Yeah. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We're doing well. Doing very well.
But if you want me to answer it just for fun, who would be more fun as a leader? David. For sure.
Yeah.
David would be more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That is correct, I will say. Yes, there is in fact a right answer to such things. Yeah, no, I think there is supposed to be a good time, because you have the average person sometimes gets swept away with the groups of people. Like, it's an interesting thing. Consider yourself, if you're not in the area of Judah, when all of a sudden, like in Samaria, they set up the golden calves, right? And they're like, you know what? We have no connection with Judah. We don't have to go up to Jerusalem. We can all just celebrate Hashem through sacrificing to these cows, right? And there's a lot of people that got swept up in that. It'd be way better if it was during the times where we were all together and not corporally sinning. Does that make sense? Michael, is this making sense to you? Am I just talking crazy?
I don't know. I feel like
Those
maybe
don't have to be mutually
missed a little bit in the moments between when I was catching up and when I got connected. So
okay.
I don't know what's the question. Like,
I think we are in the time of Judges, and I think that's terrible. Like, everyone is doing what's right in their own eyes, and you have a culture that actually is sweeping people up, where it's like, we have bad leaders and bad people. Like,
yeah,
it's a good time.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I was thinking about something similar recently. Because there is this way of we all, in doing what we all think is right in our own eyes. Not all of us are in charge, but when we kind of have a plurality of leadership and we can choose who we're going to follow or whose kingdom we're going to try to help build, I think that, it's part of that is the fact of having the responsibility to have to make choices, which is like some of the hard, it's one reason why even people, seriously are like, we need to return to monarchy or whatever. It's like, okay, that's great when you have a great king, and it's terrible when you have a bad king. So it does absolve you of responsibility. So that's, that's kind of the easy part of it. But being responsible for not just your own actions, but who you support and who you follow is, it's hard. And,
we want a good king. We don't want good fathers, which is actually what the Bible is more about. The nation is held together by good fathers, not necessarily a good king.
But why would either of those absolve you from a responsibility?
Well, it doesn't actually absolve you from responsibility, at least before God, but that's we were only following orders excuse,
Yeah.
My boss made me do it, or the devil made me do it. The king told me to do it, It doesn't really absolve people, but
that's their choice to make an excuse. But making an excuse is not the same thing as making an action. First, you have to choose the action. Then, based on what action you chose, then you decide whether an excuse is needed or not. And the key focal point for me is, though, what happens before you decide if you need an excuse?
Well, and so part of it with all these ideas of spirits and stuff like that is the idea that I've seen, like, I know, and I've been to protests and things like that, is that you can actually experience in real time people being possessed, and you can witness yourself being possessed yourself. And I think possession makes one less liable for the things that they did, but it doesn't take away, they're not completely innocent in such situations, but one can understand and maybe have a little more sympathy for why actions were taken.
Well, I think following is the action, and choosing to follow anyone is the action. And if you follow the Lord, it may mean that it's you and the Lord by yourself sometimes, which is scary. That's why the mob. I mean, a mob is kind of a whole bunch of people collectively blaming each other for whatever happens.
Right.
What really it is, the mob itself. It comes down to everybody is responsible for what they're doing, but when you're in a mob or whatever, it's easy to feel like it's not your fault.
Yeah, it's interesting if you.
I remember a number of times pre-divorce that people would say to me, you have to remember you are responsible for yourself. You are responsible to others, and it's not the same thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, so divorce is actually a great example, Sandy, is because I can very easily come up with good reasons why people should get divorced that are within like biblical recommendation of things for people to do. But we also know that statistically, people are more likely to get divorced if they have a friend who has gotten divorced. So one person might make it for the right decision, but then by them making that for the right decision, there's other people within that community where it will become easier and easier. And one of the examples that I see in my life, because I interact mostly with non-Christian theater people, is something like polyamory. There always were people that slept around, but at least the culture made them a little bit ashamed of it. They felt bad about it 50 years ago, and now they post it publicly that I am a philanderer. Like it's kind of, yeah, you can brag about it. It makes you seem enlightened to be a philanderer.
And that's based on the idea that somebody else said it was okay, mainly being who you're in a relationship with.
So. Right. Well, and I hate to tell you, and your guys are probably going to disagree with me, but the other part of that equation is the approval of church for ongoing repetitive repentance, because it breaks your status.
Yeah. We don't excommunicate, so that's fine. Did you say you're sorry? How much did you say you're sorry? Yeah.
Oh, not even if. I mean, well, anyways, that's another long discussion. It has nothing to do with Judges.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you know what, guys? Let's go to Judges, shall we? Going to bring it up on the screen. Judges 12. Add to stage. Wonderful. Why are we there? I want to be over here. Yeah, that's better. I just didn't like us at the bottom for whatever reason. Okay. Sandy, would you be so good as to read for us?
Sure. The men of Ephraim were called to arms. And they crossed to Zaphon and said to Jephthah, why did you cross to fight against the Ammonites and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house over you with fire. And Jephthah said to them, I and my people had a great dispute with the Ammonites, and when I called you, you did not save me from their hand. And when I saw that you would not save me, I took my life in my hand and crossed over against the Ammonites. And the Lord gave them into my hand. Why then have you come to me this day to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered the men of Gilead and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead struck Ephraim because they said, you are fugitives of Ephraim, you Gileadites, in the midst of Ephraim and Manasseh. And the Gileadites captured the fords of Jordan against the Ephraimites. And when any of the fugitives of Ephraim said, let me go over, the men of Gilead said to him, are you an Ephraimite? When he said no, they said to him, then say Shibboteth. And he said Shibboteth, for he could not pronounce it right. Then they seized him and slaughtered him at the fords of the Jordan. At that time, 42,000 of the Ephraimites fell. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in his city of Gilead.
That's the end of Jephthah. Any reactions before we get into topics?
Well, I know it's not really like, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where you have to decide: is this just describing something, or is it prescribing a certain action or whatever? Because like there was a big conversation, whatever you live stream yesterday, um, and kind of there was kind of a lot of discussion about like how do you know like who's in and who's out and who you can trust, and or all these kind of things we always want to ask. And they had a system that kind of worked. I don't know if that's good or not, but it was it wasn't a failure. I don't know what if it was good or bad, what it was accomplishing. But
right. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the purpose, I understand the whole book related to 2 stories of dismemberment. And the first story of dismemberment, literally the person being dismembered says, "This is justice from God for what I have done." And then the end story is about the nation itself being dismembered. And so to me, this is an example of amongst them fighting all these foreign nations with their terrible traditions and all this other stuff, they're also fighting amongst themselves. They're killing each other. They're taking a break to have a civil war, right? Which is part of, again, why I think that this is a book very important for right now, as a lot of people have talked about like national divorce, and are we right on the eve of another civil war? Is there any possibility that after the election, half of the people will whatever happens, half the people are going to be upset, which isn't the best. But so you see, even here in the end of his life, even to whatever extent Jephthah was able to unite the people, it ends with a civil war. It ends not with, oh, great, this is wonderful and everything. It ends with a civil war. It ends with them killing their own. And that their distinction is it's arbitrary. It's stupid. It's, can you pronounce a sh or a tha?
Well, it is and it isn't. It's like you said, are you in or are you out? Like what Michael was saying yesterday's live stream was about why do you need to know and how do you tell?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because it definitely it is a different thing when it's the people outside, when it's like the invaders, the obvious bad guys or something, the Philistines coming, and they're going to send spies. Then it's like, yeah, it's great if you have some kind of a test to, if it's serpents in your midst, you want to know. But
right,
once the conflict's over, and you kind of tend to see this with communities like or that, I guess it's kind of like that the conservative instinct to protect your own by keeping out outsiders. But then sometimes like outsiders can pop up in your own family or whatever,
right,
or neighbors. What would have been considered neighbors are now outsiders. And it's like it's only defining like unity as uniformity, like because really, unity without some distinction, I mean, that's all it is. It's uniformity. And that's there's real serious problems with that, because that's stagnation. It's if if you're what's going to happen to your community, it's going to become inbred, and then it's going to die. You need some of that fresh water from outside, but there is limits to that too. So
yeah.
Well, and who decides on what forms community? is another big question. Like, I mean, I can think of several examples, even just from my own family. Who decides what is community or what is family or what is in and out?
Mm-hmm.
And if you aren't settled on that question, then you've got a multiplicity of questions.
Yeah.
And like, even if, I mean, you look at, you know, what was it? I heard, maybe it was Jacob. Somebody was talking about numbers the other day, and I don't mean the book. I mean like numbers.
Right.
You know, like, what does a number mean, and how do you determine what you mean when you say a number? You know, and he was using the example of the Holocaust. So you say 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Well, are you meaning that, you know, he said, do you mean somebody lined them up and literally counted every single person? What if it was, you know, like 3 below that, or like, it's still an approximation number, but they're not,
counts.
It still counts.
Yeah.
And when you talk about how things come together and how things break apart, what actually does breaking apart mean? If you look at the children of Jacob, and you have a tribe of 12 different, like 12 sons, 12 different tribes within the tribe of Jacob.
And what one of those tribes isn't even a tribe. It's 2 half tribes.
Yeah. So are you saying you've got 11 tribes and 2 half tribes, or are you saying you've got 13 tribes, or are you saying you've got 12 tribes, but they, you know, and then you jump over, and does this reading here, like where you're reading about things where we're jumping right into the middle of how the Jewish people talk about things, does it correlate at all? I mean, when I think of how many times, was it 1 Corinthians 12? Oh my gosh, it's like, I think I've heard Jacob bring up the whole body of Christ thing more often than it came up in church, even, you know, like who determines who determines the what's in and what's out? Who determines how it is formed? Who determines how you cut it off? And when people start talking about divorcing things, well, sure, there's some places where you say you can gouge an eye out here or there, you can lose a part. Is it still the whole, or is it not the whole?
Right.
And why would you do that? And what constitutes a divorce of something? And how do you know what that even means? And I hear people talking about this stuff in some of the church contexts. And I'm like, I've been through a divorce. You guys talk about this thing like, oh, it's no big deal. It's like when I went to get my gallbladder out, you're not even going to miss it, or your thyroid. I take medication every day because
of that. Yeah, that's interesting.
My body was divorced from its thyroid. And I'm like,
right.
No, like you don't.
Or it's like when you watch movies and people get organ transplants and then they're okay. If you get an organ transplant, you are on immunosuppressants for the rest of your life. And you can be very easily sick, and you don't have regular life expectancy after an organ transplant. You're not going back to normal because your
body's not that gullible. It's like, hello, no, where did you get this from?
That's a great way of thinking about it. Your body is not that gullible. But then there's like infighting. There's essentially, I mean, within this story, you might even think about it as allergies. Allergies is a sickness, like a overreaction to a foreign body coming in to you, where your body's like, oh no, this is poison. And it's like, it really isn't. It is a peanut. A peanut is not poison. And it's your body's reaction to it, which is then killing your own body, right? Like,
no, the organ transplant thing is actually kind of a really interesting analogy to think about, because, you know, although there is like that thing where it's never going to be the same, you know, the body tolerates it for however long it does, and maybe maybe it is the it's the fact of like straddling that distinction, the inability to fully integrate that new organ. That's maybe some of the reason for the reduced life expectancy. But then, it's like, well, it's like if you need a kidney or something, that's a pretty common one. It's easy because if you have relatives, they have too. So that's, a very common one. It's like, yeah, maybe that reduces your life expectancy, but not as much as not getting the transplant,
Right.
or if you're being on dialysis your whole life, there is like interdependency either way, because the body doesn't want to let that foreign object doesn't get to become king, but it gets to be part of the economy or the culture or whatever. So because I think obviously the clear, well, even the people that aren't in Israel, they're supposed to have these laws of like hospitality that are allowing the stranger to be within the circle of the community, even though they're not fully integrated. And
even this image, it's not people like, this is worse than it's worse than a civil war, because this isn't even soldiers against soldiers. The presentation within the text is like a guy is just walking, right? They're somewhere, and when any fugitive of Ephraim said, "Let me go over," the men of Gilead said to him, "Are you an Ephraimite?" When he said no, they said to him, "Then say Shibboteth." So he's not a soldier. He's someone. He's crossing a checkpoint. He's going over a brook, right? It's I'm thinking about ones. Have you guys done? I don't know if Michael, do we sound like Canadians to you? Do Sandy and I sound like Canadians?
A little bit.
Do we really?
A little bit. Not like not like the kind of comedic way. It's subtle, but
Okay.
I mean, I've lived in areas where my ear sometimes is a little sharper for those distinctions on accents and things because of some of my travels. But
well, I can't remember, what is it called. Do you guys know what it's called? The it's not standard English. There's like a way of referring to the accent that everyone has on TV.
I do. I know what you're talking about. It's like I don't know. It's like the Mid-Atlantic or something like that. I
feel to some extent everyone here right now has that accent. Like it doesn't. You don't sound radically different to Sandy to me, Michael. And then like I grew up
on Channel 7 News before the cables hit. So
yeah. Well, even for my wife and I, there's little bits of slang that, because I grew up interacting with Michigan a lot more. I was right on the border with Michigan. I say a couple of things that only people from there say. So I say on purpose and on accident. I say both those things. Do you guys say that?
On purpose is kind of standard English where I grew up, but I've never
do you say on accident?
No, everybody said by accident.
That's right. By accident is grammatically correct, but there's specific areas in the US, specifically the Midwest, that say on purpose, on accident. So those things sound the same. Not by accident, which is correct, but I say it all the time. And my wife, who's very, very, she took English and stuff like that. She was just like, please don't say that anymore, Dave.
Oh, whatever. Tell her at least you don't come from the East Coast.
Yeah.
They speak their own language. Apparently, I heard something on CBC the other day. Apparently, In Ireland, there was somebody commenting on the fact that people who live nearby to them in Ireland or Scotland or wherever have difficulty understanding some of their conversation, whereas people in the East Coast, Newfoundland, maybe New Brunswick, where the Irish immigrated, they understand them just fine because they still talk like that.
Yeah, they still got a little bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I had a speech impediment when I was younger. And so it's interesting the way that languages work, where there's certain sounds that are so particularly difficult that to try to communicate them to someone it's so, like, it's the most complicated thing. Like, and so there's universal sounds that are harder to make. So I can still remember being brought into a room and just like being told to say the word gray over and over again.
Why
and
gray?
It was, I had my speech impediment. I had problems with R's. So I would say gway. They'd say gray, gway, gray.
That's because you have to roll it over the top of your palate with the R, but you don't with the W, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So gway is easier than gray. And even it is when people learn the language, those are certain sounds that they switch over to.
I had a fabulous argument with wasn't the audiologist. Maybe it was the audiologist, because they also do speech and language. When Jacob was about 2, 3, maybe, because I was teaching her sign, and she was teaching me how to work with him on speech concepts. And he had cranial synostosis, and his skull bones were off in certain respects. So he had a really hard time making consonant sounds, period. But we had this fabulous argument the day she decided to teach him to say hot. I could hear an T on the end of his, I could hear H-O-T.
But he just said ha.
She's going, he's not saying it. He's saying ha. And I'm going, he's not saying ha. He's saying hot. And she went, wait a minute. And
you are also saying ha.
No, I'm not. I've got a glottal stop, which comes from my dad from Glasgow. So some of my sounds that people say here, I say here by compressing the glottis.
Yeah.
And so I say hot, butter, bitter. What's some other words that have T not at the front of the word? Yeah, things like that.
Metal.
And some people, and apparently closer to some Americans, will say butter, and some Canadians will in certain areas. But you have to actually have grown up in an area where they say butter, where you at the top, air puff.
I pronounce it as a D. There's no way it's not butter. It's butter.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, and I'm, I've heard 1,000 T's in my life. It's,
But what's interesting is I feel like in the middle of moments where if people want to see what I'm talking about these moments of division, and therefore we create little purity cults in the midst of it.
Especially grammarians.
No. But just think about how this gets used by people with the term dog whistle. Do you know what a dog whistle is, Sandy?
No. I was going to go instinctively, je ne sais pas.
Okay, so a dog whistle.
No.
A dog whistle is something that sometimes I'll use the example is echo. Echo is a dog whistle. Sometimes 3 brackets, which looks like an echo, is a note to other people in the know that you are anti-Semitic.
Never heard this before.
So if you have a name on YouTube or on Facebook or whatever, and it has 3 bracketed 3 times, that means that you are you are some form of anti-Semitic.
Weird.
Is
Yeah.
that what the person with the brackets would say about themselves, or what would they call it?
Oh, they would say a healthy skepticism of the Holocaust, or
okay.
they would use a variety.
So they would say that there is something that refers to.
Yeah,
They wouldn't
they
label it as anti-Semitism.
They might say, "I'm just asking questions. I think we should ask questions about different groups, and that there's a question about white people, and there's a Jewish question, and that right there, Jewish question." Or JQ is also a dog whistle. Now, the reason why it's called a dog whistle is because you can pull out a whistle and you blow it and you can't hear it, but your dog is losing their mind, right? It's that only specific people in the know can hear it. So, yeah. So the three brackets or the echo is an example of this. And this has become a really big thing. There's one that everyone here knows because it's that people won't shut up about it this week. Christ is King.
Yeah, I don't get the...
Yeah.
I have been told by people I tend to be naive. So I'm kind of like...
You're just not a dog.
Totally don't get it.
Yeah, but there's other versions. Even we were having a conversation about it last week, and there's other examples. God is great, Allah Akbar, right? But to some people, Allah Akbar, God is great, means something in particular. And another example is that I keep on using is all lives matter. All lives matter means different things to different groups of people.
Oh, I remember that so much because, yeah. Context.
Yeah, these are perfect examples of things. And like, I have friends who are exceptionally woke, and when I'm talking to them, and we start having a conversation about race, if I use the word whiteness, then people who are woke are more likely to listen to me because I used the right words. I used words that to them means I agree with everything they're saying. I am just bringing up ideas that they haven't thought of before. And so they're willing to listen to me in a way that they wouldn't be willing to listen to me if I don't use their words, which are shibboleths, a way of telling that I'm part of the group, something like that. Anyone who's gotten, I'm sure Michael has gotten bored at times and learned about Freemasons. I'm sure you have. There's no way.
You didn't see my video the other day.
I didn't see the
video. No, I went in the video and I said, okay, I'm going like this, and now because I did that, there is some people that will be convinced, and there will be no way to unconvince them that I am part of a secret society.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
really?
It's interesting because if you learn enough about it, I don't know if Michael's going to agree with me. So I went down the Freemason rabbit hole of learning as much as I could about Freemasonry as I could. And then there'd be theories that certain pop stars like Kesha is a Freemason. And then there's a particular music video that I actually think like it's almost like stupid how often there's Freemasonic imagery within it. I'm like, I get it. You're a Freemason, or at least whoever designed this is. But if I showed it to someone who hasn't looked into this, they'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'd be like, what do you mean?
Some of those rabbit holes aren't good.
No, they're very well. And the problem with something like this is that the point of a dog whistle is there's other noises that my dog hears that who even cares? And it may not even signify important things. Because I think this is what you were saying, Michael, is that like this is a purity spiral to some extent. Yeah. And to some extent, we need purity within our groups. We need there to be consistency and a way of holding together. But then that becomes persecuting over the stupidest things imaginable.
Yeah, and I think they go both ways too. Like, because like, because sometimes there's the one where it's like, oh, I heard that person say that, so I know that they're on my side or whatever.
Right.
And then, but then there's also, your awareness of the other groups, XYZ, whatever, and they say a thing, and then you can say, oh, I can dismiss that person. Anything that they say is not going to be sincere. It's not going to be, they're not going to be being honest, or they're just, it's, either way, it's creating that distinction. It's either you trying to find who the real people are and everybody else is not a person, or figure out how, to determine if somebody is someone you actually have to listen to, or if you can just pretend they don't exist.
Michael, we have to find those true Scotsmen. The true Scotsmen are out there, and we must find them. But no true Scotsman would put sugar on his porridge.
What? Salt only? Are you a salt on your porridge?
No. It's first off, I have Scottish descent, and I put sugar on my porridge. So
I was raised with brown sugar and cream. But so what happens if I put cranberries on it?
No. It's just that's the the true Scotsman
fallacy.
Yeah, it's the name of a fallacy where two people are having an argument, and when one person says, "No Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge," and someone says, "My neighbor's Scottish. He puts sugar on his porridge." Yes, but no true Scotsman. So it's like unnecessary divisions and all this other stuff. But yeah, so this by the way,
who hit the shore at 15 and looking 12, coming straight from Glasgow. I have been warped in my estimation of what a true Scotsman is, because he was pretty much full of it.
Well, and this was actually the major reasons why people called Trump racist was because of dog whistles. They said, this is a dog whistle, that's a dog whistle. The okay hand signal, that's a dog whistle. Have you heard that? That's a dog whistle? Yeah. Because so Trump would talk, he would sometimes talk with an okay. And
Trump's old. A lot of people used to do.
Yes. But Trump, because Trump did it, there were people online that said, let's try to convince people that this is a W and this part is a P, and this is WP for white power. So that this is actually a dog whistle. But then
does it still mean okay?
But okay, so then this becomes the next thing, is that then some people who are racist and anti-Semitic actually start using that as a joke, but then they mean it seriously too. And then the left say anyone who ever uses the okay hand signal is a white supremacist. Now, wow. Michael, as a guy, knows what this is. You know what that is, Michael?
Oh, yeah.
So if among the men, if someone does that, that means they're allowed to hit you in the testicles, Sandy. Of course, if they catch you looking at that.
Yeah, if you look at it.
But so there was a picture of a group of police officers, and one guy in the picture was doing that. And this was picked up by the left as evidence that entire police force was white supremacist, because one guy was doing an upside down version of the OK sign, which we all know is this is an example of, we are in the middle of such a purity cult. We're in the middle of such a moment of Shibboteth that wasn't close enough.
So if I hear people talking about purity cults, are they talking about raising your daughters right still, or are they talking about you got to just have 5 billion walls built around you because who knows who's on the outside?
Well, that's a perfect example, is like, if you grew up evangelical, there's certain terms that you'll hear and you'll be like, I think I know what this person's getting at, and it's not what I mean.
Well, yeah. I mean, kind of the whole thing with the purity cult in the evangelical about like sexual purity turned into a purity cult in the way that it was adding all these extra steps to make it more and more like who's the holiest or whatever, and
Right. Yeah. And I mean,
smile and shake my head because I'm kind of like, I quit going to church for 6 years after my divorce. And then I jumped back in the weirdest moment. Not because I really wanted to, but I kind of felt like the boot up my, from God. And I'm kind of like, what the heck happened in the time? It wasn't gone that long. Like what on earth? It's like, you move away to work somewhere like in Europe for a while and you come back and nothing, it's the same.
Well, this is a perfect moment because of the redefinition of words. This is an example of it, is while you're talking to people, you start realizing what they mean by certain words. So two people will be fighting based on the definition of a word like racism, right? And then it's just like, well, what do you mean by feminist? Right?
I spent the last year trying to figure out woke, and I mean, feminist was probably the second one on my list. And
yeah, well, actually, that's a perfect example because the term woke and the term red pill are identical.
Really?
Yeah, the red pill is the pill that wakes you up. Right? So it is to be woke is to have taken the red pill. But
we should have to have a side conversation somewhere and you teach me how to talk again.
Well, it's literally like, that's a perfect example because it's like the word orthodox, right? Oh, are you an Orthodox Christian? God, I hope so. Right? Michael, are you an Orthodox Christian? You have a beard. Are you an Orthodox Christian? It's like, well, what do you mean by Orthodox? Because Michael would be like, I hope I'm Orthodox. Yeah. I really, really hope I am. But you're not Smells and Bells Orthodox. Yep. Right?
Yep.
It's like Orthodox just means correct. Are you the right kind of Christian?
Which is the same.
I've never been the right kind of Christian. I'm always kind of sitting on the side or the back or the front or wherever somebody doesn't expect me to be.
Well, it's the same thing with Catholic too, because you take a word that has a definition and then put it in your name, and then regardless of whether your organization is meeting the definition of that word, it's in your name, and so you can claim it.
Yeah, I had someone walk up to me once and they knew that I was very Christian, and they said, Dave, what kind of Christian are you? Because you're not a born again Christian. Because to them, a born again Christian was a very particular, that meant a certain level of charismatic to be a born again Christian. Yeah. You're not one of those, What they meant is you've never handled a snake before. That's what that's what they thought that meant.
Yeah. That's like, actually, I mean, yeah, I'd say born again, most of that's like a pretty tame one. There's like a distinction of like not Catholic or something, but like not, I don't know. I wouldn't expect that to be a snake level.
You have to realize I grew up Catholic. So what we meant by born again would be woo. Yeah. Okay. It's interesting too, to me, because the text does not take extra time to be like, hey, this is so symbolic, isn't it? But even within language, Shibboteth continues to be significant, like where people will refer to something as a Shibboteth.
What does the word mean?
So I will use it as an example.
I mean, I know what it means in the sense of this passage, but I'm saying, when they were saying, say Shibboteth, what was that?
It means either corn or flood, if I have it right. But here it says a custom, principle, or belief distinguishing a particular class or group of people, especially a long-standing one regarded as outmoded or no longer important. The majority, under the influence of vague 19th century shibboleths, understood him to be associating himself with the doctrine that every nation has a right to be a sovereign state. It's an example.
Wow.
I know, because I know. Well, I was just wondering about the word, because I know there was one that there was in in Italy, or I think it might have been in Sicily or somewhere where they did it, and it was like, whatever the word is for a garbanzo bean, and like if you were a native, you would say it one way, and if you were not, you would say it a different way.
I think you are talking about chickpeas, sir.
Yes, well, whatever.
No, that's a perfect example. I grew up not around Middle Eastern people. I grew up around Italians, so they were garbanzo beans. And then as I got older and started knowing browner people, I found out that they were chickpeas.
Yeah, but there's another Italian word that's neither chickpea or garbanzo bean. I mean, it's closer to chickpea, but there was a word that was hard to say.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
But that was what the item was. So that's what it's just like. What is the item of a shibboleth? So a corn or a flood?
But it's like when you're trying to communicate class, this happens all the time. So part of the story of the Italians in the US is Italians were really hardworking, and they could gain money and become rich, but they couldn't gain class. So I grew up around Italians that were really good with cement. So every now and then you'd see like a cement statue of David or something like that, but it's cement. It's supposed to be a marble statue, and it starts degrading very quickly, and it's like on someone's front yard, and everyone like it displays wealth, but in a gaudy way that people say that's not classy. And so they could immediately say, or like I worked at a suit store, and so when people would do up the bottom button of a suit, I'd be like, that's incorrect. And they wouldn't even notice, like things that what kind of knot you tie your tie with, right? For some people immediately communicate things. My father-in-law came from a very classy British background. And so he sits down for a meal and just says, "Where is the butter knife?" Because he grew up that the knife that's with your plate is not a butter knife. That is a knife that you use to move your food around. It's not a butter knife, which is a particular knife, which is only to be used for the butter and for nothing else.
Low-grade Glaswegians also have butter knives, apparently. My family did.
But it's little things that immediately tell people you're okay, you're not okay.
Yeah.
This is all right, this isn't all right.
See, now it's funny because my Scottish side of my family was more particular than the English side of my family.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure of my background, but my grandfather apparently, my understanding was that my grandfather married beneath him.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, they were just basic Scots. Whereas in my mom's side of the family, I don't know exactly what their status was, but they were Londoners. And I mean, he drove cartage wagons.
Yeah. Well, so. And it's I think that these things are especially important to understand right now because it's a moment we're living through. And you don't even know, the thing about dog whistles is that you don't even know that they're happening around you.
So what do you think about the fact that Toronto has just changed their bylaws or whatever to allow rooming houses again?
I'm not going to pretend to have an opinion on that yet. I
had a lovely chat with, I heard it through a local real estate agent who was shopping where I work, and was also talking about the fact that the sense is multi-generational families are going to have to start being a thing again, because that's the only way we're all going to get through this.
That is what I'm currently seeing in my area is that, I mean, it used to be much more of a thing, but in my area, the only people who are buying houses are people who are from an immigrant culture and are willing to live entire families in a house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I have groups of people that are like, do we have to start a commune in order to own property? Is that what we have to do?
My sister has a 900 square foot house, had my mother who was 90, my sister who has some developmental issues, her daughter and her daughter's child, all living in the house.
Mhm.
They've just finished moving the daughter out, and my mom died 2 years ago. But they've still got my sister there, and and for their entire marriage, they've always had somebody in the house with them. Always. Now he's a minister, so some of it's that people just show up.
Right.
But it's a natural thing for them to go, but this is just how you live.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, yeah, it is. But only if you can say no.
Shibboteth.
Kidding. Yeah.
Shibboteth. Okay. So let's go back to the text. Let's continue on. I don't think I have anything more to say about that. Michael, can you read off here? Are you able to see that?
Yeah, when I hold it like this. Okay.
Yeah. Give us a read to the end of the chapter.
Okay. After him, Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters he gave in marriage outside his clan, and 30 daughters he brought in from outside for his sons. And he judged Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried at Bethlehem. After him, Elon the Zebulunite judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. Then Elon the Zebulunite died and was buried at Aijalon in the land of Zebulun. After him, Abdon the son of Hillel the Pirathonite judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys, and he judged Israel 8 years. Then Abdon the son of Hillel the Pirathonite died and was buried at Pirathon in the land of Ephraim in the hill country of the Amalekites.
Okay, good. Okay, so the first thing to know is that right before this story, not right before this story, right before the Jephthah story, there's a mention of a guy who has 70 sons riding donkeys. So you can see that there's it's getting worse. It's the amount of people on donkeys is lessened. You have this judge. So we immediately go from a purity cult to this guy giving his daughters in marriage outside of his clan, and he also, where's the other guy? Yeah, he had 30 sons and 30 daughters he gave in marriage outside his clan, and 30 daughters he brought in from outside for his sons. So there's this trading that's happening. So you have at the exact same time as the purity cult, ridiculous amounts of mixture.
Well,
right?
Okay. What is the clan level of distinction? Because, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it's not saying. I mean, because a clan is below a tribe, right?
Right. So it could.
So these are not necessarily like foreigners. They may be other Israelites. They're just not. I mean, I don't know, because that's like. Is that, I don't know if that's a bad thing or it seems like it might be a good thing. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe that is a good thing, especially right after people getting.
Like, if they're foreigners, it would probably say that more clearly, right? I don't know.
Yeah. There's yeah. No, that's a very good point. Thank you for calling me on that, Michael. Yeah, it might be good, but there's definitely something to this idea that he's marrying his children outside of the clan, right?
There's a pattern to it, at least.
Yeah.
So why?
Yeah. And I am seeing it in relationship. No, it's this other guy.
I mean, is that is that like, I don't know, is that being placed in, because the other ones, let's see, the next guy, it says he just died and doesn't tell us how many sons. Then the other guy had 40 sons and 30 grandsons on 70 donkeys. I don't know. So that's just kind of this one little unique mention about that one guy. I mean, and I don't know. It's interesting. He's from Bethlehem, like,
Yeah.
is that like, is that like saying something good about Bethlehem, because it's not much after this that's where, God calls David out of Bethlehem.
Yeah, and so Ephraim and Manasseh is sometimes seen in that there's certain groups where there's messianic figures that will arise, and it's like, which is the tribe where Messiah will come, and there's almost like a competition between Ephraim and Judah. So switching from Ephraim country to Judah country is also an interesting it's an interesting way of laying out what's going on. I mean, it's all like, I find it interesting. The Amalekites are mentioned at the end, that it's in the hill country of the Amalekites where one of these guys is buried as well.
Yeah.
And everything's just about to go to pot. Just about to. Yeah, to me, the text is all leading to Samson as the central figure. It's not an accident that this is the character that people remember from the book. Is going to be Samson, and that's going to be such a major failure.
Yeah, apparently I wasn't supposed to, but I definitely thought he was the coolest guy when I was a kid.
He
was strong. He had to be cool, right?
Look, there's a couple of
Samson, He-Man, and the Ultimate Warrior.
See?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I raised sons. I'm kind of like, yep.
Yeah. With a bone club, beating people to death, starting fires with his foxes. Come on. It's pretty cool. Well, do you watch Jack Reacher? Have you seen that, Michael?
I have not.
Okay. So, it was actually, anyway, it was filmed in Ontario, neither here nor there. But there's a scene, they take him into custody and they don't have handcuffs that fit his arms because his arms are enormous. So they zip tie him and he's just in his cell and they're like giving him a hard time. And then it's shown that he couldn't have been the murderer, right? Like he's brought into a police station for under that accusation. And he just goes, "Am I free now?" And they go, "Yeah, someone cut his zip ties." And he goes, "No, that's fine." And he just like pops them like that and they fling off. Like flax when it hits the fire, Michael. Like flax when it hits the fire. Actually, yeah, okay. I think this is as far as we should go, because if we go any further, we are going to get into Samson territory. And my word, he is his own. That's a whole other kettle of fish. Is that right?
That's a saying.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but there we are.
It's funny, yeah, because I would just say the same thing, but I don't really understand the exact application.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So someone named David is saying Samson is the least Jewish character in the Old Testament, along with Joshua, which is why the West likes them so much, and Judaism does not. They stress his failure. We stress their heroism. The 9 worthies. I'm going to disagree. Well, okay. Samson is supposed to be the most Jewish character and fails. There's an importance of that. Yeah, he is I mean, related to purity, the notion of the Nazarites is that you have people who take on extra restrictions. In Jeremiah, there's a tribe that has extra restrictions on them. They won't live in buildings, and the Rephites, I think they're called, and they are prized as an example of like, look, they put even stronger restrictions on them. So Samson is supposed to be like a monastic figure. He's the worst monk ever.
Well, he only does the one extra thing, and he ignores everything else. Well, until he doesn't do the extra thing anymore, and his hair gets cut off. But like the extra thing is the only thing he does, really.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's a whole bunch of extra things where, oh, you're not supposed to drink alcohol. It says he throws one of the feasts like the feast that they threw in the land, which basically means he threw a kegger. So he's supposed to be a teetotaler. He throws a kegger. He marries foreign women and prostitutes, and not only he is not supposed to eat, or he's not supposed to make contact with a dead body during that time. And he eats out of a dead body, eats out of the carcass of a lion.
Yeah.
Fun character. Look, now I'm getting, we got to cut it. Otherwise we're going to keep on going. So do you guys have anything to say about Shibboteths? Or even the amount of donkeys that people are riding on?
Well, I didn't pay attention to most of these earlier ones where you guys were. What do we learn about the donkeys so far, and all the ones where I wasn't here? I mean, I know it's like, kind of the kingly whatever animal, but what's the significance of the donkeys?
Well, I was actually saying that I think that the symbolism of the donkey, that they ride donkeys, is because it's not a good military animal. Is that you get passages that say that there's no blacksmiths in Israel, even like anyone who has a weapon, it's like a makeshift weapon. When kings are introduced, they have two swords. Sword number 1 is with Jonathan. Sword number 2 is with Saul. And then, like, it's so rare to get a sword that in order for David to have a weapon, he takes the sword of Goliath later on, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you get ox goads and the jawbones of donkeys, and even the fact that what's his name, that Ehud has a sword. It's one that he makes himself. It's like you couldn't actually get weapons, and donkeys are actually, they're very strong, but because they're so stubborn, they're stubborn like a jackass. Because they are so stubborn, if you bring them into battle, they'll just run off, right? Or are more likely to. And a horse might too, right? Like you have to sufficiently break the spirit of a horse in order for it to be a good war horse. So the idea that these guys are riding into battle on donkeys, it's a certain amount of money, but it's not the kind of animal you'd want to bring into battle.
So, but is that absolutely a statement that they're riding into battle on the donkeys? Like, I'm thinking because it's the judges always putting their sons on donkeys or whatever. I don't know. Is it like, because it's a symbol of some kind of authority? Because the king is supposed to, like that's what Solomon, obviously Jesus, but that's preceded by like Solomon when he or whatever is crowned, and he comes into the city on a donkey or whatever. Like that's the like prescribed. Like I don't know. Is it like a symbol of like, a peace, like a
yeah.
Because horses are you're not, the king wasn't supposed to multiply horses because that was like a war animal or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not that horses are bad, right? There's like, so they're, because of the difficulty of donkeys are related with humility, right? The donkey itself becomes a shibboleth, for lack of a better term. There's groups of Mennonites that are literally called Black Car Mennonite, because when their group broke off, they were supposed to live simply. And at the time that their denomination was formed, the Model T, the cheapest car you could get, was a black car. So within their denomination of Mennonites, you owning any color of car was seen as flashy, as like prideful to have anything else. This is kind of funny because they'll now drive these massive trucks that are so expensive, but it has to be black. Yep. As long as it's black, it's okay.
Yeah. I wonder if there's also some interesting thing with the donkeys, like, because donkeys, like, they have them here where people get them with their sheep, because the donkey will protect the herd.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah. That they're like that they are shepherds.
Yeah,
that donkeys are shepherds.
Wow.
But this overlaps with all the stuff we talked about before too. They're dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? They are dangerous animals. But because they're dangerous, they're also protectors. So if they're part of the group, then they can kick a wolf, and that's good. But it can also kick you, and are way more likely to kick you than a horse is. Horse still might kick you. Horse still afraid of battle. Yeah. So that's what I kind of think, because also even the term chivalry means owning a cheval, owning a horse. So it does refer to money, but not so prestigious that you're on a horse. Still lower class. David is in the chat going off on further Samson stuff. Be patient, David. Be patient. Next week at 1 p.m. Or whatever time it is for you. I forget, time is not universal.
Whoa. Yeah. Is this
okay? I think I'm going to call it there, unless there is. Sandy, do you have anything else to say?
No, apparently not. Not today.
Oh, actually, I have a question. Sandy, are there shibboleths for the deaf community?
So
like a thing that if someone does, you immediately know, oh, you didn't just learn sign language, you like really know it. Actually, sorry, I want to tell you a joke that I made that was semi-offensive, not to deaf people, but to a Middle Eastern person. I dated a Middle Eastern girl, and the first time I met her, she said to me that she was Middle Eastern, but like her family was very Middle Eastern. And I said to her, oh, like they tried to set you up with your cousin? And she stopped and looked at me and she's like, you know about that? It was like, it was this thing where I made this joke that was such an inside joke that she was like, oh, you know Middle Eastern Christians. Because she had, like, there were people that she knew that were married to cousins, like first cousins, right? It was not, within that culture, it was not, you don't mention this to the white people because they're weird about it, but within their culture, it was still allowed. So me knowing about that immediately told her, oh, I know things about your culture. I'm like, I know more than the average person.
So is there the foolish thing of trying to live up to her, or did you spill the beans?
No. That's a, as they say, that's a whole other kettle of fish. So Sandy, is there a deaf shibboleth where if someone does it, it's like, oh, okay, they didn't just learn it, they know it.
Probably. The few things like, well, like, okay, so are we talking like just basic expressions? because like most hearing people would say that they know sign language and they will go sign language.
Right. I did that the other week.
But deaf will say this. Sorry.
Right. Just.
No, not just. Not just. No. Actual, real, proper expression. It's expressing yourself.
Yeah. No,
just
I like it.
The hands around. No, it's different.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael, do you have any other further shibboleths you want to mention? Any Masonic handshakes? What is this? Is this one? I think this is one. Am I gonna get someone gonna shoot
it is
it?
funny. It is funny how the Mormon ones are directly lifted from the Masonic ones.
Yeah.
Which, it's like if when they were secret, that was fine, but once the internet, it's like, oh, that's where he got that stuff from. Not a direct revelation from God.
Fun fact. But Michael, don't you know that the Masons can trace themselves back to Solomon? So maybe it is direct biblical revelation.
Yeah, but Joseph Smith wasn't telling the truth. I mean, I don't know about where he got it from.
Yeah, it's true. Okay. That's all I have to say about that. Maybe we can talk about Freemasons another time. Okay. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks guys for being here, and we'll talk to you next week where we will finally get into Samson.
Mm-hmm. And we will chat. You can figure out a time.